What's going on, listeners? Welcome back to Matt Goes to the Movies, and this is the final episode of WandaVision. So, if you've been listening to the show, you know that means I'm joined by Rob and Harrison from the Basement Binge. So, bittersweet episode, but guys, welcome. Rob, how are you feeling with this being the last episode?
I've got a lot of emotions about this. I would definitely say I've felt most of the feels this week. This one it takes you on a roller coaster with what it brings you. You've got some pretty fun moments. You've got some light moments. You've definitely got some pretty heavy moments, though. There's some real gut punches in the series finale. And I just have to say that I'm so glad that we get to do this show together to kind of work out our thoughts and our feelings and our emotions about this, since we don't all have the ability to create a pocket reality to deal with those things on our own. We kind of get to do this together. So I'm really happy to be able to talk about this with you, both of you guys.
Yeah, Harrison, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, similar situation. I remember, finally coming around today to recording house. I was like, finally, we can talk about it, and just being like so excited that I've waited so long since Friday to like have complete thoughts about it, and to be able to talk to the two of you about it, because we text each other, but it's so limited. It's like, did you watch it? And then it's like, yeah, but like you can tell that we all want to talk about it, but we wait to say something. So I was extremely excited. But then also I was like, oh man, like this is the last WandaVision episode. So it's just bittersweet.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about that. I feel the same way. It's like, oh man, like it's over. It's super fun to talk about. But for a show that in the beginning wasn't super on my radar, when Rob and I did an episode called Matt Goes to the Mailbox, I named Moon Knight as my most anticipated show for Disney Plus, and I was like, yeah, WandaVision, I'll watch it. But for me personally, this isn't something that I was like, oh my God, I have to have this. It was, yeah, it's going to be MCU content. It'll be nice to have things, back from the MCU, but this quickly turned into something that was, okay, I need it to be Friday. And, it certainly helped having, you guys to talk to about it. But, on its own, if you don't do something like we're doing, or you're not texting a buddy, which I'd be surprised because this is pop culture now, it's still super entertaining and engaging. So I'm super excited to get this episode started, and we have a lot to talk about. So, Harrison, I'm going to let you go first on the segment that we call 2-Minute Warning. Listeners, this is where we're going to give our spoiler-free thoughts about the episode before we really break this episode down. So, Harrison, you got first dibs.
Yeah, just as like an overall review of the season and the episode, like Matt said, I had no idea that I would care this much about WandaVision. And the way that the episode was able to wrap all of that care that I have developed for Wanda and Vision into a final episode, and also into a season concluding, not necessarily season, but like event concluding thing, because I don't think there's going to be season 2. Either way, it's ending is what I'm trying to say. And the way to wrap that all up, I thought, was phenomenal. It's interesting to now go back and like realize that I have complaints, because in the moment I thought it was the best thing ever. There wasn't a single thing that I had wrong with it, because I was so wrapped up in the emotions of Wanda and Vision and everything that's involved in this concluding episode, on top of a bunch of exciting and like cool things like, whoa, like this is like a superhero movie, and this is happening and type of thing. And to have both of those was just great. And week in and week out, I found out all the reasons that I loved WandaVision that I had no idea. I came to care for Wanda and Vision in a way that I didn't before, and I had no idea that I was going to love this show this much. So to have it all wrapped up is again bittersweet, but the way that they managed to do that, and the way that it made me personally just totally love it in the moment, I thought was awesome. I know not everyone feels the same, and I'm sure we're going to get into the complaints. And I'm going to get my spoon feeding over here as Jack, as I've labeled myself. But it is just a great episode to enjoy. There were so many, even as we've had a chance to talk about it a little bit, and I've kind of come to terms with my complaints, there's still so much about it that I love, that I just think about this final episode in great regard.
Yeah, Rob, what's your initial thought about this episode.
I think we're all three in agreement that, wow, we never saw it coming that we would feel so into this show when it was first announced. I mean, it was just kind of like, okay, what's this thing going to be? They're doing it based on old classic sitcoms. Like, what? Oh, okay. And we didn't really pay much attention to it, I don't think. And this show has really become like this is the piece of pop culture right now that really is moving the needle. This is what people are talking about online. This is what people are talking about at work. This is the show that people are talking about. And it was just so great to have new MCU content after over a year of nothing. Just every week when that opening credits rolls and we get the theme song and we get the Marvel Studios logo, like just every week, I'm so just excited for new MCU content. And yeah, Matt, when we did the mailbox episode, we looked at this and said, this could be kind of trippy and kind of wild. Like, what is this thing going to be? I'm a little more excited for it than I was initially. And sitting here after 9 weeks of this, 8 weeks, I guess, because we got 2 episodes in week 1. Wow, I can't stop saying that I'm blown away by it. But I never imagined that this would be as well executed as it was. And yeah, like I should really doubt Marvel Studios because how often do they really let us down? Yeah, there's so much to like here. However, there's one major thing that I absolutely hate from this episode. We'll get into it. I hate it. I detest it. I cannot dislike it enough. Nitpicks on other stuff throughout, maybe some story things that I wish would have been developed differently or wrapped up differently. But one major thing I actually feel kind of offended about, and I don't mean offended in the way that somebody had said an offensive comment, but just as a fan, I kind of feel like my sensibilities were betrayed and just kind of discredited the fan base and what we were expecting with one major thing.
Yeah, there's a lot that I agree with there. I would say that this episode has one major snafu for me that's kind of unforgivable. It would take a lot to make me understand that decision, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But there's a couple minor things too. One of them is not as unforgivable as I feel, this one plot point. But there is another part of this episode that really causes some doubt for me about I can't believe they would miss out on that opportunity. But I mean, overall, this episode, in the moment, it's really easy to forget what some of these things while watching the episode. It's when you're sitting and thinking about it, but it still cannot really shake how great this show was, and what I felt was good about this episode for me does outweigh the negative. So that's going to be my spoiler-free portion of this. So listeners, if you've been following along with this show, this is where, if you haven't for some reason by now been able to watch this episode of WandaVision, pause the show, go watch it, and come back and listen. If you do not want to be spoiled, because this is where we get into our spoiler discussion. And guys, I think it would be appropriate, considering we've talked a little bit before recording about what we feel is the disappointment, and we have a couple of varying opinions on it. But one thing that I know we're all in agreement on is it's a major missed opportunity that the first time that we see White Vision, because that's what we know him as, he's not voiced by James Spader. I felt that was a huge missed opportunity to really drive home emotional trauma for Wanda. Not that she didn't have enough of it, for God's sakes, but I just felt like that would have been a slam dunk. It would have added to the episode. And I was quite frankly, I was surprised that they did not have that happen. So Rob, I'll defer to you first. What were your thoughts on that when he shows up on the screen and he speaks to Wanda and it's Paul Bettany's voice?
So last week I thought I was pretty slick and I had a theory. Turns out both you guys had that exact same theory, that that's what we were going to get. And And we had seen through IMDb that James Spader was credited as being a part of the show. Ultimately, I don't think we ever got him. In fact, unless they, were crediting him because of a, previously on WandaVision, and they set up something in one of the, one of the scenes leading up to it where it was a piece of Ultron's voice, which I don't even remember seeing that. But yeah, to call it a missed opportunity, I think is just absolutely the perfect way to put it. It would have had even more tie-in to the creation of Vision, which was a lot of what was going on with this. It would have really differentiated the two of them together. I do like that they made his voice different. When they face off against each other, it makes it much easier to understand which one of them is speaking at what point and which one of them is doing what. So I do like that even though they kept Paul Bettany's voice, they altered it. They made it slightly more digital. They made it slightly more robotic. But man, that would have been such a cool callback to have James Spader voicing White Vision. And then he can adopt Paul Bettany's voice again when he kind of regains his memories. But yeah, missed opportunity, but for sure.
Harrison, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've definitely had some time to stew over all of these things. But I'm just going to refer back to what you said, Matt. You said that it could have been a slam dunk. And I think that that's a great expression because I think with Paul Bettany and the editing that they did to his voice and the way that it done, it was just like a nice, easy layup, right? It got the job done, but there was some more that could have been added that really would have been like a slam dunk. And those moments when you're watching a TV show or a movie and something happens, you're just like, oh, like you just kind of freak out and raise up in your seat a little bit. That would have been that moment if it was James Spader. It didn't happen. So total missed opportunity. But I will say, beyond just the initial shock that I was wrong when Paul Bettany's voice came out instead of James Spader in the episode when I was watching it for the first time, he hadn't talked yet. And I was like, okay, he's going to open his mouth and it's going to be James Spader. And it wasn't. And Paul Bettany's voice came out. And I was surprised. Once that initial surprise was gone, I was like, okay. And I got used to it. And it was totally fine. And it worked actually quite well for me. I actually really liked what they did with his voice. So I really did have a big initial disappointment. But by the time we got to the Ship of Theseus conversation, I had just kind of come to terms that I was wrong. And that it was like, yeah, missed opportunity, but whatever. This is what we got, and I'm okay with it. So, yeah, definitely could have been better, but I've come to terms with that one, so to speak. Like, it's not like I like, oh yeah, it's the best thing ever. It's just like, whatever, that's what we got, and I guess I just have to accept
it. Okay, so let's move on though, and I think Rob, based on your comments, I'm aware of the part that you're saying you hate, but the real elephant in the room for this show that I think everybody was waiting to see what this payoff is going to be. Let's get that out of the way now. And let's talk about fake Quicksilver, because we find out in this episode that any crossover theory, at least initially, who knows, they could certainly do something down the road. But as far as fans know right now, the Evans-Peter crossover was simply just them placing an actor inside the show, because we find out, and I'm not saying this wrong for listeners, if you have seen this or for some reason don't care to be spoiled to the episode, his name is Ralph Boner, which I never thought I'd have to hear from the MCU. It sounded kind of juvenile. But he's a nobody. He is just a resident of Westview like everybody else. And Rob, I'm going to assume that's what you meant, is the part that you hated. So I'm going to let you close out this segment. So Harrison, I'm going to go to you first. What are your thoughts on this?
I'm definitely in the minority between the three of us. First, let me say, when I was watching the episode, it didn't even cross my mind that it was something to complain about. Like, I was so involved in whatever was happening. Like, it's hard to explain where my mind was at, but I was just kind of like, oh, interesting. Like I was just watching it play out and just observing it. I didn't have too many critical thoughts about it. The episode ended and I put a 5 stars up and wrote a review, and I was like, this is the best thing ever. And then I started to read other people's reviews. I started to think about it more. And then I was like, wait, he's not Quicksilver, like he's Ralph Boner, like, and so in the moment, the whatever you want to label it as, I was fine with. But the more I think about it critically, I'm going to stand firmly on the line, since I've been washed back and forth between my own thoughts and people who have similar feelings as me, and then you guys who I think strongly dislike it. Strong kind of land somewhere in the middle and say, I think it was a missed opportunity. Do I hate it? No. Am I kind of like disappointed in the MCU and the show creators that they didn't capitalize on it, and that the way that they didn't capitalize on it is with a stupid joke? Yeah, I'm like kind of irritated and like that was dumb. Clearly, this is the wrong decision, but I'm not so bothered by it where I'm like really upset. I'm just like that was dumb. They should have done something differently, but I'm sure that it's going to be awesome whatever does happen. Like, I have such confidence still that they've kind of I've lost a little bit, but my confidence is still strong that whatever Evan Peters is important. So I just kind of view it as a misstep that should have gone differently and sadly didn't, but will get eventually. But I know that I'm kind of soft in my perception of it, especially compared to the two of you.
Yeah. I'll just say my thoughts on it. And my thoughts are, I'm still thinking of it in terms of what we have right now. I'm taking it at face value that this is what it is. And to me, if this is the route that you were going to go, it was great to see him. But seeing him and how now this has come to light of him just being a regular character, I can backtrack and say, I don't feel that you needed to cast him to get to where we were in the season finale. So to me, that's why I'm a little bit more harsh towards it, because I feel like you could take that entire point out and still have the same result. So the fact that you really kind of, Rob, I think you said, had like a betrayal, so to speak, to fans, especially too, because regardless of what you think of the Fox X-Men movies, one thing that a lot of people liked about those movies were most of the cast choices, and he was one of them. So I know a lot of people were excited to say, well, at least we're going to get him crossing over. So the fact that it just seems to be a throwaway is why it upsets me. And it also, too, I immediately thought of the Mandarin in Iron Man 3, where they've shown almost a track record, so to speak, now of taking somebody who seems to be a really interesting character and a really interesting theory. Before it was revealed that Ben Kingsley was playing a character named that was an actor playing the Mandarin, he was absolutely terrifying in that movie. And then he's turned into a joke. And it's the same thing here for me with Quicksilver. It was great to see him. You were wondering what was going to happen. Is this going to be the first sign of somehow he got plucked from the multiverse and it's treated like a joke? I don't know if maybe it wouldn't have been treated as much of a joke if his name, again, I can't believe we have to say this is his name, but his name was Ralph Boner. Maybe I wouldn't have thought of it as much as a joke, but yeah, taking it at face value, this part of the episode does really aggravate me for those reasons. So, Rob, I'll let you close this part out, because I'm assuming this is what you're talking about, that you hate this.
Matt, you would assume correctly, sir. So Harrison was pretty nice with how he went on it. Matt was pretty straight to the point with how he discussed this. I'm just going to rain straight hate on it for a little bit, if that's okay with everybody. I'm just sitting here in my office. I've got a glass full of haterade, and I'm ready to drink it all because I'm actually pissed about this. It's so, I find it disrespectful to the audience. You throw this cliffhanger out at the end of on a very special episode. Back in episode 5, they give us this crazy cliffhanger. We all knew who Evan Peters is. We all know he played Quicksilver in the other version of this character. So you bring him in, you get everybody thinking about what that's going to mean, how that's going to tie in, how does this create, more storylines in Doctor Strange, who else is coming through. You do all this stuff. Then you have the Halloween episode where he's basically functioning. as Quicksilver, as her brother. They have the kind of a little bit of a back and forth, and she kind of accepts that he's her brother, but not really. What happened to your accident? Well, what happened to your accident? Your accent? Like they have that moment. They give him the super speed. They give him kind of the homemade version of the comic accurate Quicksilver outfit. They do all this. They give him still super speed when he's kind of acting as Agnes kind of thug, and then his name is Ralph Boner. Like, are you kidding me? Like, it just it's probably my least favorite thing that Marvel's done with their whole cinematic universe. I'm confident enough to say that, yeah, the Mandarin twist, and I'm using air quotes as big as I possibly can imply here, was terrible. And this is also terrible. And there's really nobody that looks at Iron Man 3 and says, man, what a cool twist that was. Like, you don't ever hear it being discussed that way. It's in most cases, everybody is doing the same thing you're saying, Matt. Like, wow, what a waste. Like, what an absolute waste. And they repeated that same mistake here. And I'm gonna jump in the same camp with you, where as we sit here today, this is what we know. We know that he was not actually Pietro from the X-Men universe. As we sit here today, that's what we believe. That could change down the future. I don't necessarily believe that it will at this point. I've been wrong about a lot of things with WandaVision, but it doesn't seem like necessarily that's what they intend. It's a throwaway. Like, if you're going to do that, what was the point of even adding Pietro to this show? Like, not only casting this actor for this role, but what did you even need him for? He really didn't serve any real purpose. That you could have had a different cliffhanger for the 5th episode. There really wasn't a whole lot that he needed to be there for. And it feels like I feel like my emotions are betrayed. And I kind of feel like, as a fan, it's somewhat disrespectful to me, I think, is the way that I'm looking at it.
Yeah. I mean, don't forget too, like I kind of, one thing, and I'll close my thoughts on this, that kind of aggravated me a little bit more is the nod that they put in to X-Men Days of Future Past later in the episode. When, and I forget the kid's name, when he goes to stop the guards, it's literally, he takes the guy's hat. It's literally like the scene from Days of Future Past where Quicksilver runs around the room playing Time in a Bottle, and he puts the cop's hat on. You get that like little Easter egg back to that movie, and I'm like, oh, don't reference the fact that he was in the, like, don't double down on the fact that you know what you're doing and then like slap me in the face. Like, so like having that Easter egg in there kind of aggravated me a little bit more. But that's just me. I feel like Rob does, so to speak, that at face value, it's pretty disappointing, but there's still a lot of good with this episode. So I really would like to start talking about some of the good stuff, unless, Harrison, do you have anything else nitpicking wise that you want to get out of the way before? Again, I don't want to bag on this episode because there's a lot here that I am emotionally invested in. So I'll just say, Harrison, do you have anything else that we want to get out of the way with this? And let's move on to what we love about this episode.
It's not necessarily one specific thing. It's just that I wish they would have fleshed everything out more. For example, the emotional... sorry, let me start this sentence over. This is the most emotionally character-driven thing we've ever had in the MCU. There were attempts for this, like we keep talking about Iron Man 3. That was an attempt at having a story focused around someone's emotional state of being, and it was a total fail. Like, at least in that aspect. We can talk about the rest of it later. But
do we have to, though?
Yeah, right. So, like, the amount of work that went into me being emotionally involved in Wanda and Vision, and also understanding both of them emotionally, mentally, all of those things, is really significant and a strong step in a good direction for the MCU, and is incredibly interesting and, excuse me, really creative. But there's other things that aren't taken up to that level. And, you can't be firing on all cylinders all the time. I get that. But what I am disappointed is what was holding you back from making the episodes 20 minutes longer or 10 minutes longer and having these little details fleshed out a little bit more, where the references were something besides just a reference. The amount of times that Agatha or Agnes referred to her husband, Ralph, and all the ways that it hinted at him being Mephisto, all the ways that things hinted at the multiverse. I'm sure we're going to get things for these to play out in the future. Maybe we're not. They were all just red herrings. But whether it's the complaints about Evan Peters or about the missing person or about the engineer or these little things that were really hinted at that the three of us spent hours talking about, to just let those be more fleshed out, or just let the things as a whole be more than like, okay, let me sum it up in this one sentence and stop rambling. If you take out the emotional weight behind Wanda, this isn't a very good show. The last episode, the season as a whole, I was so invested in because of the emotional weight for Wanda and for Vision and what it meant. And it brought me to tears. It did. I mentioned that multiple times, that I was really emotionally affected by the show. If that's not there, there's not much else to really hold it together. So I feel like the emotion behind it is a really strong glue holding all these weak pieces together. And I just wish that all of the pieces could be as strong as the glue, so to speak. But I will say that glue is so strong that it made this series as a whole really good, and I really enjoyed it, and I have really loved watching it. It's just looking back now, it's over, and I can look back and look at it as a whole thing. It's just a little weak.
Yeah, Rob, I just want to jump in really quick. I will say, yeah, I think that's a really good thought on that. My last complaint that I will have is, speaking of the emotion, once you find out everything that's going to happen and you really kind of get an idea for how this is going to end, the ending scene between Wanda and Vision did not pack as much of an emotional punch as I feel it should. And I don't think there was any way you were going to convince somebody that Vision will be gone for good. However, after they spent so much time building them up and getting them, specifically for me, because I've talked about it, two characters that I did not care about. Not only did I not care about their relationship, I really kind of did not care about them individually at all. I didn't think they were fleshed out all that well in the movies that they were a part of. So to get me as invested as I was in them, I didn't feel the emotional payoff of the goodbye, knowing what we know is still out there for Vision. That's my last thing, where it's not a huge problem for me, but I wish I would have felt more at these last moments, which I'm sure we'll get into. But that's my last thing. Rob, what do you got?
A little bit of a little smattering of everything we've kind of talked about, but I kind of want to talk about Sword and Tyler Hayward in general. Throughout this series, their motives seem contradictory at times. His specifically, it kind of seems like he flips into villain mode based on when it's convenient for the plot or when the plot needs a villain to sort of show himself, as opposed to, like, when you stop and ask yourself a question like, why exactly is he doing this? Oh, because we need a dramatic moment. Like, why is he shooting at the kids right now? Like, that escalated quickly. Like, he just starts shooting at kids. Like, who doesn't do that? Just, hey, yeah, this seems to not be going well. Time to pull out my gun and shoot at kids. Okay, well, why? Like, it just doesn't make sense, except that that's what you needed at that moment in time. And it kind of seemed like that's what Monica Rambeau's character needed to fully let us see what her photon or spectrum or whatever she's going to go by. She's had some different names in the comics, to kind of see what those powers look like. It's just little things here and there. And then it's just like, okay, you're off to jail. Like, no, he probably wouldn't be. Like, that's, he really wouldn't be. He'd get out of it. Like, there's just so many things that just I don't really understand what they were doing. I don't understand what he was doing at times. He seemed very compelling and interesting at different parts of this, but then I just feel like the way they ended it with him, I just didn't really like. I also kind of nitpicky, but the way her accent just goes in and out all the time, like pick one, like just pick one. I don't know. That maybe it's just me. The final scene, I kind of disagree with what Matt said a little bit. I did find that to be quite emotional. With one caveat, man, that wall sure closes slow, doesn't it? Like it seemed like it was going really fast across the rest of town. And then when they're getting ready to say goodbye to one another and we need this longer, drawn out, like, you know, kissy, huggy, sort of tear jerky scene, that thing starts moving really, really slowly. And then, knowing that the kids are going to kind of evaporate and disappear was kind of like, hey, wait a second. No, I kind of need to know about that. Like I'm a little more interested in that idea. And maybe it's just because I am a dad and that part of it, when they said goodnight to their kids, like, I was like, this is kind of messed up. Like, this is really kind of messed up. Like, they know they're going to disappear and they're just tucking them into bed. And yeah, that was kind of messed up to me. And we get to watch Vision die a third time. Like, yay. because who didn't ask for that? I think that's probably my list of nitpicky stuff.
Okay. Yeah, I think all pretty good, solid points there, but let's get into the good. Cause again, there's a lot to like about this episode. And first and foremost, to me, is the production of this episode. We get, a Vision versus Vision fight. We get to see Wanda using her powers, and there's certainly no skimping on the budget or the effects in this show. I mean, to me, this was up on par and even better than some of the stuff we got in some of these Marvel movies. When Vision is fighting and they're flying around and they're phasing in and out of each other, throwing punches, it's all absolutely top notch. And I was just blown away with the production level. And it makes me even more excited for these other shows that seem like they'll be a little bit more action focused, like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, that, boy, it's not they're like, well, we got to kind of hold back because, we don't really have a budget. Like, this isn't a TV network show. This is Disney saying, no, we're treating these like live action movies. So, Harrison, I'll let you go first. What do you think about some of the production in this and some of the things I talked about?
Yeah, something that really makes me appreciate this season, or I got to stop calling this season, the series as a whole, is that I remind myself this started in black and white as like a 50s sitcom. That episode is the same one as the same series as the last one. We traversed time and space of television, and the production was top notch and everything. And that's all I'll say.
Rob, what are your thoughts on, how even as a whole, the way that they treated this show? Again, this is not we want to do it, but we're not going to go, in terms of production, we're not going to go all out. There's nothing held back with this.
Not at all. I think you talked about the CG and the overall level of production that we got here. It felt like this was another piece of the MCU. This did not feel like they were cutting the budget a little bit and cutting corners with some of the effects to, save money because they didn't necessarily want to blow it out to the budget of an Avengers level film. The fight scene between Vision and Vision, which, one of the critiques that I and many others have of the MCU as a whole is that, man, there's a whole lot of people fighting other people with the exact same power set as them. And we kind of got that here too. We had Vision on Vision. They're literally the same character. And then we had two witches kind of battling back and forth. So okay, once again, we're right back with characters with the same power sets fighting each other. But I really like the creativity that was used in the Vision on Vision fight. I think kind of my gold standard in the MCU for just absolutely wild creativity with how characters with these abilities or access to powers that do these kinds of things was in Ant-Man. I just love the growing and shrinking and the way that they used those ideas and made compelling, interesting fights that was just more than kind of some of your slapstick, just basic punching and stuff like that we get in other action films. There was real creativity with that, and I saw that also here. If a character could phase in and out, and had the ability to fly and had the ability to do some of these things, what would that actually look like? And I thought it was done spectacularly.
Yeah, I was a huge fan of the Vision fight scenes. Also, too, I thought this was another episode as it progressed with Wanda. She became more and more confident in her abilities. You start to see it on her face. I love the part where she disappears and sneaks up behind, and she does the mind control thing, similar to Age of Ultron when she takes over the Avengers. I love that aspect. And I loved the progression for her throughout this episode. And I sent you guys a picture of it, but when she goes full Scarlet Witch mode, wow. This is to me one of the best costumes in the MCU. Like, I'm absolutely stunned by the costume that they have for Wanda. I thought it was fantastic. I didn't know what to expect for it, but I'm just blown away by it. Rob, what are your thoughts on her in this episode?
Yeah, I love the moment where she kind of really assumes that mantle, and we get what I would call perhaps a more like practical and modest version of the comic version of her costume, which is the comic version bears a lot of skin, which doesn't necessarily always translate the film very well, nor should it all the time. Just is what it is. Like, I don't know that we necessarily need that. We're trying to get families to watch this together. But no, it looked fantastic, and I was really excited to see what they had done with it. And I'm happy to see that they're hopefully going to continue that. We saw another glimpse of it at the end credit scene. But man, when she puts those runes up in the sky, it seemed kind of obvious to me that she was missing on purpose. And I wasn't sure what that was. Like, I didn't necessarily put two and two together that it was for the runes. But when she kind of, shows her final, like, put that final piece into motion and just makes checkmate, what a phenomenal mic drop moment that is. It's just like click, boom. And it was just awesome. I mean, I was like jumping up off my couch, like fist pumping in the air. I was so excited about that moment. It showed Wanda can be vulnerable. It showed Wanda can be loving. It showed Wanda can be a lot of things. It also showed Wanda can be a friggin' badass too. And moving forward, the character that Matt, I agree with you. I didn't really particularly care that much about her in previous films that we'd seen her in. I want to see her in everything. I want to see Wanda in every Avengers film moving forward. I want to see her cross over into as many things as we can get. I want to see more of what's going to happen next with this character.
Yeah, Harrison, your thoughts on Wanda?
Yeah, I agree with everything that you guys said. I earlier when you asked me about the production, I was thinking about so many things, so I just kind of like had a brief comment. But I got to say that this show has done a lot, and one thing that it has done phenomenally well is the costuming. And I just want to touch on that one more time, is I think it's just great, everything they've done with that. But also, just to kind of echo everything you guys have said, to make like we can kind of nitpick and say, oh, it's a hero and a villain with the same powers fighting each other, but to make those exciting and to make them interesting and to make them kind of unique and something more than just like a blast battle, so to speak, I really enjoyed it, and I was really impressed with it. And I remember watching when Agatha goes like use her magic and it doesn't work, and the runes appear. I was like, oh dang, that was sweet. Like it's just like the way that these things escalate my appreciation for Wanda as a character. I had no idea. When I pressed play on episode 1 and I saw that black and white 50s sitcom, did I know that at the end of this series I was going to be really involved in Wanda? No clue. I had no idea. I was excited to get a House of M adaptation and to get the multiverse. We got a loose House of M adaptation, which, again, props to them for adapting such an iconic story so well to existing characters. Where was I going with that? Oh, yeah. I wanted the multiverse. Like, that's all I cared. Like, forget Wanda and Vision. What I want from WandaVision is the multiverse. Well, we haven't got the multiverse yet, but what I got is a huge, huge appreciation for Wanda and Vision emotionally as individuals, as people who really are kind of broken, but also appreciation as like a hero who can get up and just be a total boss and own a battle. I had no idea.
Yeah, I think, we kind of talked about too, where there's some things left unanswered. But one of the things that works being left unanswered, because she's so intriguing now, is Wanda. And one of the lines that like piques my interest in this show is Agatha talking to her. And I'm probably not going to get this line exactly right, but she says like, powerful enough to destroy the Sorcerer Supreme. Anybody who's watched, the MCU knows that the Sorcerer Supreme is Doctor Strange. WandaVision will be in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. But the simple fact that it's mentioned that like she can destroy him and is more powerful. Well, what does that mean? Like, are we going to see the two of them fight each other? It like, oh, you took a character that, again, I cannot stress this enough, I didn't care about at all. And now you've made her one of like my number one intriguing options going forward with, well, is she always an overarching problem in the MCU going forward? Because at any moment she could snap, because she's still probably very broken. It's not like this season ends with everything's tied up in a bow and Wanda's great. The end credit scene surely shows that everything is not okay and there might be more trouble on the horizon. But man, have they made her just incredibly interesting to me. So, Rob, anything you want to piggyback off of with that?
Yeah, I kind of want to go a little bit further on something you started to allude to. For the future of the MCU, is Wanda going to be a hero? Is she going to be a villain? Is she going to be somebody who sets things in motion that other characters now have to respond to or deal with because she's pursuing her own interests that might not necessarily line up with others' interests? I think that we could see a little bit of both. Certainly, I think it's the 47th or 48th end credit scene. I can't remember which one it was, but we see her, researching something in that little, valley cabin she built for herself, and we hear the kids saying, "Mom, Mom, help us, rescue us," or something along those lines. So you have every reason to believe she's trying to figure out how to do that. What she's going to be messing with in order to get there, whether or not they adapt the actual genesis of those characters from the comics, where like they're forged out of a piece of Mephisto's soul, which is going to get like really, really out there. As much as I didn't think that Agatha Harkness was going to be in this show initially, and I kind of stood pretty firmly and said, I don't think that's a thing. I think they're going to probably be, they don't want to get too supernatural. I don't think we're going to really get Mephisto. I think there's maybe still a limit, even though we did get Agatha, and I was completely wrong on that. I'm just not necessarily convinced. Maybe we see Mephisto and Ghost Rider, because we are still supposed to get that, I think. I'm not necessarily sure that we're going to really start getting into like pieces of soul forming children level territory in the MCU. But I think they'll adapt that differently. But something she's going to try to do to get her kids back could certainly lead to events in the Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah, Harrison, anything you want to follow up with on that?
Yeah, there's actually a big thing that I want to mention is to compare, not to compare, but to tell Wanda that her powers exceeds that of the Sorcerer Supreme. All right, so this is the guy who, not even at like his peak ability, saw 14 million potential futures, single-handedly fought Thanos pretty well on his own, and kind of like master planned the whole successful end battle of Endgame on top of just working like epic looking spells and being a genius. Wanda's powers exceeds his. Like, that's incredible. I hope that they just capitalize on that instead of just getting red glowy beams shooting out everywhere. We get some of the great style that we got with Doctor Strange and Wanda's vision. Did I just say Wanda's vision? Oh my gosh. Wanda's powers can start to become a little bit more fleshed out, which I'm super excited about. So yeah, something that I thought about that I don't talk about very much, but when you were talking about, oh, what's the deal with Wanda if she could snap at any moment and become a villain, I think about this frequently. When in Endgame, when Carol Danvers or Captain Marvel shows up and just wrecks day, which is a sweet scene. I love that moment. It makes me clap. But when that happens and she just destroys Thanos' ship and then pretty much single-handedly fights Thanos until he cheats with a Power Stone, like in my head after I was like, okay, I don't even care if she's OP. Like, just fix it later. Because in that moment, she's really is just kind of like, geez, how do you have a threat after that without it being another Thanos? So thinking about all of that, where was I going? I have too many thoughts. Oh, okay. So Wanda is now supposedly up there in like OP level. How are you going to have villains that are threatening if these characters are this powerful? One, there's part of it that they're learning their powers and growing into them. But the second thing is I hope that it's a kind of a continuation of what we got in WandaVision, where the threat isn't so much a villain, but it's and their physical presence or physical dominance that you have to win in a fight, but more of like an emotional or intellectual battle like Wanda had in the series, where things emotional lines are great. I'm thinking like Civil War and Civil War II comics, specifically Civil War II, where it's not so much a fight of, you know, physical presence or dominance or power, but it is of intellect and emotion and reason, because that's threatening and that's menacing. If we can get villains that challenge these physically overpowered characters, which we're getting more and more of, and challenge them in a unique way, I'm really excited for.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think this show, showcase that you don't have to have huge battles to make it interesting. There's a lot of emotional weight behind this series. And, one of those emotional weight scenes, Rob, I know from talking to you, you really love this. So I will let you kick it off. You love the dialogue between Vision and Vision when the fighting stops. You're a big fan of that. So do you mind kind of talking us through your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so we get something kind of different. Normally, when good guys fight the bad guys in these kinds of things, there's a lot of explosions. There's a lot of there's pretty much no wall made out of concrete that's safe because it's going to get a person thrown through it. Like, you're just guaranteed that that's going to happen. Anything breakable in the room is going to get shattered, destroyed. Property values in the area are definitely going to fall because the insurance adjusters are going to be very, very busy for days after these guys fight. But right in the middle, they make a choice to, instead of Vision defeating Vision by punches or powers or beams or energy or any of these other things, they actually have him defeat him through logic and through reasoning. And to really and it works. It works incredibly for both of them. There's a reason why the colorful Vision says what he says, and there's a reason the white Vision listens and chooses to allow him the opportunity. With the whole Ship of Theseus discussion, which is one of those really fun thought experiments. There's a bunch of them out there. If you ever get time to research thought experiments, they're one of those ones that I wouldn't say start doing it right before you go to bed because you'll be up staring at the ceiling all night trying to figure them out. Like, maybe do it on lunch Like, don't do it at night because you'll be done. Like, you'll be like, oh my God, why did I do that? But the ship of Theseus is a good one. And for him to throw it out there, and it works perfectly, and it kind of causes him to short circuit just temporarily enough for him to say, may I? And he asks permission, and the white vision gives him permission to do it. And it just, everything about that scene from the moment they start the conversation till the end of it works. Every detail, every shot, every piece of dialogue, every decision works. I love it. It's one of my favorite scenes of this whole series.
Harrison, what are your thoughts on this part of the episode? Because it is different. It's interesting for a fight to just break down to a conversation immediately. So what are your thoughts?
Well, first, I've been thinking about the ship of Theseus quite a while now. Luckily not staring up to the ceiling at night, but I think about it frequently. And specifically in where the heck did White Vision go and when is he coming back? Because I want more of him, especially to see what someone with Vision's memories, but not the Mind Stone, is going to become. But that's a whole other question that you didn't ask. So what I do think about that moment is that, kind of like I said earlier, I think it's great to, as much as I thought it was really cool to see the two Visions use their powers against each other in a unique way, like one of them phasing and catching the other's punch in his arm and then throwing him, with his hand in his arm, that type of thing. That was really cool, but it kind of got boring because it looked kind of cartoony, like, oh, there's just these like guys who, first, props to the VFX people to making these people not look like they're flying, but they're people who are adjusting their density and floating around, so to speak, through adjusting their density. That was sweet to see. They really capture that. But it can get boring really quickly. And so to slow that down and have it be a battle that's consistent with the character of Vision was sweet. And I had no idea. I did not expect it. I thought they were going to punch each other till the live long day. One of their brains falls out. But we didn't get that. One of their brains exploded into memories and then he disappeared. So I prefer this because I think that it's I don't have this isn't the right word, but it's the word that's coming to mind. It's challenging to the yeah, there we go. It's challenging to the concepts that we're used to as far as a fight goes. And I hope we get more of that. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm super excited for Falcon and the Winter Soldier and explosions and people punching each other at full speed. But, I like a challenge here and there.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly well put. I certainly like this. I wasn't really a fan of it during my first watch through. And not that I didn't like it, but I had a much better understanding and appreciation for it on my second watch through of, wow, this is so much different than what we're used to. And in terms of why this character would do this, it just makes so much sense for talking about some things like, well, why did you do that? That didn't make sense. Or like, why did you not take this opportunity? This is something that when you break it down, it makes sense why this happened between these two characters. So I loved it. I thought it was a great scene. It did pack emotion for me. And again, like getting back to emotion, this is backtracking, but when Agatha turns the people of Westview off, so to speak, and they're back to their own reality, when they start approaching Wanda, wow, like you get again for a moment, like, yeah, she did have, she did create this, like she's kept these people captive. And when is it, Rob, is it Dottie or who's the girl that comes up to her and talks about her daughter? I'm drawing an absolute blank of her character's name.
Yep, it's Dottie. She was kind of the HOA kind of ringleader, or the PTA, I think, president or whatever it was from the second episode. If you've forgotten about her by now, I wouldn't blame you.
Yeah, so Dottie, but when she comes up to her and just says, I have a girl, if she could be friends with your boys, if that works for you, or like, if you would just like let her out of her room, please. It didn't turn me in like, oh God, like Wanda, you're such a jerk. Like, how could you have done this? But man, again, it's so impactful to sit there and once again just be kind of punched with the fact of, yeah, there's probably still, regardless of how this ended, there should still be a lot for Wanda to answer for. And again, uh, she seems like she's okay with it at the end of the episode, but I don't know how you could just forget everything that you did. Even though these people are now free, she really messed with a lot. And I thought that scene was fantastic. It once again showed you the weight of what she's done to these people. Because again, as far as we know, the people of Westview, and Harrison, I'll go to you first, so correct me if I'm wrong here. They still know what happened. Like, they understand where they were. So it's not like Wanda's just scot-free to me inside of her own mind, so to speak.
Yeah, I've actually been thinking about that a lot. Like when she closed the barriers to the hex, did she like wipe the memories? Probably not. So does that kind of gives her reason to be viewed as a villain more? So that could drive some motivating things. Yeah, I think that also in terms of the future of the MCU, their perception of Wanda is never going to be the same. Whether the people in Westview remember it or not, Sword definitely remembers it. People like Darcy and Agent Wu, they definitely remember it. So they're not just going to let Wanda float around like she owns a place because she can cause some problems. But at the same time, they also saw Wanda as a person of reason. How, to quote Monica, if she's a problem, she has to be the solution. When you really do think about that, they know whose side she's on ultimately. So yeah, it was a very interesting scene that carries a lot more weight than I really appreciated in that first moment, because I think that Wanda is going to continue to deal with her own trauma, but part of that trauma is going to be what she did to other people.
Yeah, I mean, Rob, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, she does have her Thanos-like retirement home out in the woods.
Yeah, she does. It seems when she kind of pulls her hoodie up and starts walking away, it does kind of seem like she starts to process what it is that she's actually caused. We've spent a lot of time through our recaps of this show talking about her emotional state and her post-traumatic stress that she's experiencing from all of these terrible tragedies that have happened in her life. I want to shift for just a second. Let's talk about the people of Westview. What kind of therapy are literally every resident of this town going to need? You think about, they were not in control of their own actions. They were not able to comprehend where their loved ones were. None of them, when they kind of break out of that, you think about when, I think it's Norm gets, not Norm, one of Vision's coworkers, when he pulls him out and he's like, I got to get my phone. I got to call my sister. I got to check on my mom. He's panicking. He's having some serious issues. Not being in control of your own actions and being forced to kind of live a fake alternate life. That's going to mess up a lot of people in this town for a very long time. And it's kind of interesting to think about what that could turn into as we sort of try to decide, how will she be thought of in the future? Will she be a villain? Will she be a hero? Will they ultimately appreciate her when she shows up to take down a big bad that nobody else could have been able to do? Or will it be a mixed bag? I think they're kind of setting it up to be a mixed bag for her.
Yeah, I think that, you could certainly sit there and be like, okay, well, she realized her mistake, but if the end credit scene shows us anything, Rob, you mentioned it, she's, a la Doctor Strange, when he's in his movie physically sleeping, but he's projecting himself to study. We get that as the end credit scene. She's making tea and her Scarlet Witch form is in the other room, going through and studying the Darkhold. But you hear that cry out from her kids. So we've already seen what she's willing to do when she loses somebody. Well, if she thinks she can somehow get her kids back after them being wiped away, to me, anybody who knows of these events, that's if they get wind of this, that's another sign to be fearful of Wanda because okay, you made right Westview, but now you're in the same situation. So do we have to come after you to ensure that you're not going to do this again? There's a lot there. But one thing that I want to piggyback on really quick too with that is, Rob, when you and I did our MCU rankings, one thing that I talked about in Endgame that I did not like at all is how they treated Thor. And to me, hats off to Marvel because in Endgame, Thor's just emotionally destroyed and it's treated like a joke. This guy clearly has post traumatic stress and everybody makes a joke out of it. And that was one thing that I said in Endgame that like I did not care for. But man, Marvel knocked it out of the park with showing somebody dealing with this kind of trauma and how that can affect them. And I, again, like Harrison said, I'm not always hoping for these big, rock'em sock'em robot fights in the MCU because part of what made this show so great is the emotional journey and trauma that you saw these characters going through. So I just want to throw a quick shout out that they took that route with this because we've certainly seen them go the other way to the point where I just was really thrown off by how they treated Thor in Endgame. So I really liked that they used this with Wanda for this show. So I just want to throw that out there.
I gotta agree with you if I can jump in here super quick because that's a difficult line to stick to, so to speak. Is you can teeter either way, and I just want to add in there like House of M as a comic is really famous for a reason, and something that I just keep thinking about was that this series is an adaptation of an iconic storyline that is also fitting to characters that are pre-existing within a different universe, specifically the MCU. And to be able to adapt something and make it so unique and fitting these characters and so emotional, I'm just really impressed. Like I've commented in the past podcast that there was a few episodes that really brought me to tears for Wanda, and I did not care for her at all. I found her annoying as a character, and it was tons of fun to see both Elizabeth Olsen's and Paul Bettany's range emotionally, and how great it was. Like my emotions were just totally manipulated. They could have just ripped my heartstrings right out at that end, which they held back a little bit, which I appreciate, and so do my tear ducts. But I was not expecting any of this. Again, to say this, when I clicked play on the very first WandaVision episode, I had some ideas, and every single week when I came back, I had my master plan of what I thought the episode was going to be, and every single week I was just impressed with what we were getting as an adaptation of an iconic story and what it meant for Wanda and just the uniqueness of this, and almost like the rarity in this type of genre. We had our complaints in the beginning, but when was the last time that we got something that was so what's the word I'm searching for? So atypical. That's the word. So character focused in the MCU, and so well, because we can talk about Iron Man 3 again to bring that dark horse up. That was an attempt at character focus that fell flat on his face, went right over the handlebars. So I got to take my hats off to Marvel that they've come a long way. Still some things can improve, but I like the direction that we're heading, because if we can get more of this, I'm just going to be involved even more, because there comes a point where the Rock'em Sock'em Robots, as fun as it is, how can you reiterate that over and over? We had 23 reiterations of it. Let's move on to something new.
Yeah, Rob. I probably have some thoughts on some of those things that were just said. What do you got for some of those thoughts?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I immediately come to as we're talking about the overall quality of this series and the time they're able to take to tell a story and build more development into characters that previously really had none. I don't remember, Matt, if it was the MCU rundown show that we did, or if I had talked about it on this show's recap. But I really wish that we would have not gotten Civil War as a film, but we would have gotten it as a series, a 9 to 10 episode series. Because man, if they would have really adapted more of the major events of what happened in the comic run of Civil War. Really focusing on Tony and Steve's kind of struggle with what they were having to do and their motivations for it. Even in a movie as long as Civil War, there still was not enough time spent, I think, developing what they were feeling emotionally about why they felt so strongly about their opinion of sign the accords or don't sign the accords. And then all of a sudden, when they had to meet one another, there was so much more that could have been done. I would have loved to have seen the same care given to this show, given to that storyline. So look for the future. Yeah, keep giving me keep giving me the movies, keep giving me, as many films as I can get. But I would really love to see some of those really iconic longer pieces of comic book history done more as a show where we can spend the time with it that we need to. It makes me very excited for what Falcon and Winter Soldier is going to look like. Because look, in the movies, there's sometimes I do want a little more, but sometimes, like if it's a Hulk movie, I don't really need them talking to one another. I can just kind of want them blowing each other up. Like I just want them smashing and everything to explode around them. Like that's what I want from a Hulk film. But at other times, when you've got the chance to give me something like this, in a Doctor Strange movie, I want something a little bit slick where he tricks Dormammu with the sort of the time loop that he creates. Like I want something like that in that film. Know when to give me what I want. And in some cases, like we've said with WandaVision, we didn't even know that this is what we wanted, and it gave it to us in a way that we never knew to even ask for.
Yeah, that's very well said. So, I think what I want to ask you guys next is we want to talk about, obviously, this is the end of WandaVision here. And we want to talk about, some of our favorite episodes, some of our least favorite episodes, what we think as, a whole of the show overall. But really, with everything that we've talked about, and we've gone over the bad and we've gone over the good, Harrison, anything on this episode particularly that you feel that we haven't touched on from your point of view that you still want to point out before we kind of move into another segment here of starting to really talk about the big picture?
Yeah, let me double check here. I'm pulling up my notes here on my phone and just reading over them here. Oh yeah, Monica Rambeau, and Spectrum, or whatever she's going to be called. She's great. Can she be in everything from now on? I love her as a character, and she had like 30 minutes of screen time for this entire series, and every moment that she was in was phenomenal. She stole my heart, and I really rooted for her. That moment. So to take a character that we saw as like a 9 or 10-year-old in Captain Marvel, and then like that's it, and to have me like totally cheering her on when she's breaking through the hex barrier and when she gains her power, and having those voices play in her head, like I don't know what it is. I think it was partly the actress's performance. I think her name's Tiana Paris. If I said that wrong, I apologize. But and the characterization that she had in this series, when she was breaking through that barrier, I was clapping and cheering like, yeah, you got this, Monica. Like good for you. Again, bringing it back to those emotional battles, so to speak. But seeing her powers is super cool. Seeing her jump in front of a bullet to save some kids, seeing her be able to absorb kinetic energy, and how it just kind of like shows it without like really spelling out, both absorbing them from a bullet and also from Wanda, to seeing things through her power sight, or whatever you want to call it. What a great character to come out of this series, because she's awesome, and I can't wait to get more of her. And I know nothing about her from the comics. I had to research her because of this show. But for somebody who had such a small part to just totally gain so much interest, what a great character to come out of this series.
Rob, same question to you. What do you kind of have left about this episode that you maybe feel we haven't touched on?
I do want to talk about real quick the neat little nod to the Wizard of Oz towards the beginning of this, when Agatha kind of leaves her boots under the car when Wanda gets thrown out. I just kind of thought that was neat. She's a witch herself. I did sort of like that. the other part of this that we didn't really get a chance to talk about, as Wanda's opening and closing the hex and allowing real reality to creep in on her reality, it kind of got me a little bit watching the kids and that version of Vision sort of get dusted a little bit. That was really well done. That scene, just the weight behind it, and what we were hoping that she was going to be able to accomplish, but knowing what she ultimately had to do. I don't think we gave that an opportunity to call it out for how well that was done.
Yeah, I really liked the version with the kids, Rob. You mentioned it, in the beginning, like, boy, that was kind of messed up. They kind of just say goodnight to him, but they know they're going, like, they know they're not going to be there anymore. But I think it also spoke to the fact that Wanda was aware that she couldn't hold on to this anymore. So I thought it did show character development. Like I said, I still kind of stand by my point of, at least for me, knowing that we have the other Vision out there with all of the memories of Wanda and Vision. Some of the final moments with Wanda and Vision fell flat for me because of the fact that I was like, well, there's one out there that knows everything that they went through together. So essentially, she's not really losing him. And I don't know why. For some reason, that didn't have as much emotional weight. But Rob, like you said, you're a dad, I'm a dad. And, sitting there and having them just say, yeah, like I kind of don't even want to talk about it because I can't imagine saying, I'm sure you couldn't either, like saying goodnight to your kids and knowing that's the last time that you would ever say goodnight to them. Like, how do you do that? So that scene right there was a ton of emotional weight.
Yeah, I wouldn't have left their room. Like, I wouldn't have gone downstairs to say goodbye to my made up spouse. I would have done that a little differently.
So, Harrison, I don't know if and forgive me, but what were your thoughts on those two goodbyes? Did that work for you with Wanda and Vision? I'm sorry if you did say that earlier in the episode.
I think I just kind of talked on how it made me, like, just the end in general made me emotional. Yeah, I wanted to bring up those moments as well. Specifically Paul Bettany. I don't know. He just really drew me in. I don't have any kids yet. I plan to, but don't have any yet. So I don't think that the involvement of the kids had the same weight to me. Like, I could recognize, like, oh, that's awful. They're saying goodbye for the last time. But of course, not having that experience or something to relate to, I don't have that the way that you guys do. But what I do have is a very sincere relationship with my wife. That's like the focus of my life right now. So saying goodbye to like made up kids is no big deal because I say goodbye to my nieces and nephews all the time. But like saying goodbye to my wife was like torture. So that scene with Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen at the end when Vision turns back on the light, I lost it. Like, I just started to cry, and then I just cried the more and more they talked. And whether he comes back or not, I was just because. So something that I'll share. So something about me is that when I was my wife and I we met in high school. We dated each other in high school for our senior year, and both as part of the church that we're members of, we went on a mission. And when you do that in our church, for me it was 2 years. For her, it was a year and a half. You say goodbye to everybody. Like, you don't have any contact with your family. Like, you do. You email them once a week, but it's not like pick up the phone and talk to them. It's your life is totally different. And so we were dating and we were leaving. And it was kind of like, okay, we really like each other, but we're leaving and we're only 18. We're going to come back and maybe we'll date each other and maybe we'll get married. But honestly, we have no idea what happens if in 2 years we don't like each other. And so, like, saying goodbye to someone and hoping that they might be back, but appreciating what you had is something that, like, really I relate to because I've experienced that. And so I think that moment that I'm finally putting together right now, I think that's why I was so impacted by that, because I know what it's like to be Vision in that situation, and it really moved me.
Yeah, I mean that's some really good points. It shows that we all have different reasons why we could relate to certain things in that scene, and I think again that's just one really great part of this show is there's a lot of different moments that different people can relate to. Obviously Rob and I talked about relating to the fact of the kids, and you're relating to the fact of you said goodbye to at the time she wasn't your wife but somebody that was a part of your life, and well, maybe I'll see you, like that's weird, like I'm saying goodbye to maybe see you again. So this show did a really good job. You said it really well, Harrison, that there is there's a glue with this show that is incredibly strong, that holds a lot together, and it was a great refresher to see something that was carried by emotion and not strictly action. So Rob, any final thoughts on that?
No, no, I think we're ready to move on.
All right, so guys, we want to talk about this show as a whole, and I think starting with Rob, what would you say is your best episode of this show in general? We got 9 of them. Some of them were really good. Some of them you look back on, and who knows? Maybe we don't know until a complete second watch through if we get through one of those. But what would you say your favorite episode is of this series?
For me, it's episode 7, Breaking the Fourth Wall, the one that's kind of a mid to late 2000s setting that takes some real, Malcolm in the Middle influences, some influences of The Office. I'm sorry, that's not the Malcolm in the Middle. It's the one that's more like Modern Family in The Office. But there was enough answers that we got. There was enough intrigue that was laid, that. I loved almost everything about it. We get the reveal of Agatha at the end. We get the whole spin-off kind of feel to Agatha all along. And I loved that episode from start to finish.
All right, Harrison, your favorite episode of this?
Yeah, I'm having a hard time picking. What I did real quickly while you guys were talking is I went to Disney Plus on my phone and just scrolled through all the episodes and kind of looked at the little previews they had. Now I'm scrolling through some thoughts I had written down for each one. And this is the one that I'm gonna say. It's episode 8. It's called Previously On, and it's the one that I think could definitely be the weakest episode because it kind of just felt like Agatha revealing herself and then taking us through Wanda's life and then spelling it out for the people who couldn't put it together. Like, that's kind of a dumb way to say it, but that's a lot what it was. It's like, okay, let's go to Wanda's past. Let's explain how it's led us to here we are. And let's have Agatha explain to the people who can't put it together what's happening. So like kind of like dumbing it down. But for whatever reason, that was the point where I knew no matter what happened, this was a 5-star series for me, 5 out of 5, so to speak, because I was just so in love with this being totally about Wanda and her emotional state and how it led us to where we are. And on top of that, I just was broken like a twig when Wanda drove in her Buick to Westview and saw an empty house lot that Vision wrote on a map for us to grow old together. And maybe it's just because I'm relatively young. I've only been married for a few years, and I'm very in love with my wife. And so that's like a big part of my life is romance, and that it just broke me like a twig. And I think of that episode in great fondness because it made me love Wanda. Now, I wrote in my final review of this series that the saddest thing for me is I'm sad it's over for Wanda. I'm not so sad that it's over for me, but I'm sad it's over for Wanda. And it really was episode 8 that did that for me.
Okay. I have to say that my favorite episode for this series to me is episode 5. And that is titled on a very special episode. And it's not because, not even looking back, well, looking forward to where we are now. Obviously, that's the episode, if people remember, where we get Quicksilver at the end of the episode. But for me, it was everything that led up to that. That was really the first real chinks in the armor between Wanda and Vision. And there was so much emotion in that episode for me personally, especially when, Vision, who never, ever in anything that we've seen him in, gets emotional, raises his voice, does anything, literally yells at Wanda to stop lying to him because he knows something's going on. And he's like, there's people here that you're keeping hostage. I love that episode. It was incredible to me. I look back on that one extremely with fond memories. So for me, episode 5 is my favorite episode of this series. But I mean, there's so many really great episodes. So
is that the one where she tried to roll the credits on Vision?
Yes.
Oh, that's a great episode. Yeah, good pick. Both of you guys are good picks. Yeah. Hearing you guys talking, I was like, oh, I should have picked that one. But it's just like a testament to how good this entire series was.
No takebacks, Harrison. You already said your answer.
Yeah, I'm like that kid in like second grade who wants to change his answer.
Oh man, you got that prize? I want that.
Yeah. It's like show and tell. Like I'm that. I don't know if you had that kid in third grade, because I specifically remember in third grade, like this kid, he'd bring something for show and tell, and someone else would bring something else and like one up him, and he'd ask the teacher to be able to present a kid. That's what I feel like right now.
So what would be, Harrison, I'll let you go first on this one. What is your least favorite episode of this series?
Yeah, let me scroll through here again. Let me double check. I think I know, but I'm gonna go with episode 2, because I think that it should have just been part of episode 1 and been longer. Like they did the double release, why not just make it one episode? And just because I hardly remember anything that happened in that episode except for that their beds scooted together. Like that's all I remember. So I mean, great introduction, really strong introduction to the show. But I think that episode 2 isn't good without episode 1. But then again, it's been a few weeks since I watched episode 2 or episode 1. But again, if I can't remember it, it's default the least favorite.
Gotcha. Rob, I'll let you cap this part of it off. So I'll jump in with, for me, it was episode 3, because we talked about it in our review. That was the episode where I was like, okay, episodes 1 and 2, I can understand the slow build. We're trying to figure out what this show was. Episode 3 felt like the hardest episode to get through because it was 3 episodes of the same thing, and we said it on the show. But I remember, at the end of that episode going, boy, if something does not happen here in episode 4, I'm a little nervous for this show. So I just remember looking back at that episode and going, whew, this one's pretty rough to get through here. I feel like for me, that one, like 1, 2, and 3 could have been combined into just one whole thing. Harrison, you're saying like, why not just do 1 and 2? I felt like 1, 2, and 3 really could have just been one whole thing. So for me, episode 3 was the weakest of this series. Rob, where do you stand?
Matt, I'm with you. Episode 3. At the time when we reviewed it on Mondays with Maximov, I just kept referring and thinking back to Monty Python. Just get on with it. Okay, we get it. She's got trauma. She created this fake world to live in so that she could deal with it, and she's trying to make everything this idyllic version of it. And we're going through TV history. Like, okay, we get it. Let's see something already. And we do get it when Geraldine gets booted out of the hex and is surrounded by the sword agents. We start to get, when she mentions Pietro for the first time, and, we get a little bit of it there, but, it was definitely a slow build. And I know that it's been kind of popular online to make fun of people who complained early on that this show had a very slow build and kind of didn't do a whole lot for a few weeks. But I think it's a valid criticism. I really do. In terms of would I rewatch this series or not? If I did, I would probably skip episode 3 mostly because there's not a whole lot you really need there. I don't know if I would ever actually rewatch this unless I was doing like just a complete MCU rerun through from start to finish, and you have to include everything. Then I would. But the setup of Pietro not being really who we were hoping that he was or led to believe that he was is such a betrayal. Not necessarily on the same level as the last 2 episodes of Game of Thrones, which, spoiler alert for anybody who's not gotten all the way through, but the last 2 just completely ruined the series. Like, you don't know anybody who's rewatched it during the quarantine. Like, when we were all shut down and nobody was going to work and everybody was stuck at home, like, I don't know anybody that said, hey, I'm going to rewatch Game of Thrones, because the last 2 episodes completely ruined that whole series for something that everybody was building up and became one of the most iconic pieces of pop culture for that period of time that everybody was talking about. I'm not quite there with the level of betrayal that I feel with the fake Pietro kind of twist on a twist. But I'm not far behind either. It's probably my second, worst kind of twist or worst kind of way that the fans were treated.
Okay. So we've got through the best. We've got through what we think are the worst. What is your Rob? I'll let you go right into this one. What's your favorite moment of this show? Like, what was the one moment where you were just like, "Yep, that's it"?
That is an excellent question. I think on episode 4, there's definitely some moments there where we start to kind of put everything together. And that's, I think, where really, we had just got done talking about where 3 was just, come on. I hope this is going to get better. Man, there's so many parts of the 4th episode where it takes place completely outside the hex. We don't have anything in that takes place inside. The seeing the unsnapping happen was definitely a great moment. I mentioned previously my love for that Ship of Theseus scene. That might be my favorite out of all of it. It's right up there for sure.
Yeah, for me, definitely seeing the effects of, the snap being undone, because again, we hadn't really seen that yet from the MCU. This was something that really showed, wow, what was it like when everybody first came back? And it brought back a lot of that weight that should have had in the MCU that was kind of brushed over. So that was an amazing moment to me. I absolutely love that. Also, too, when we talked about a little bit earlier, but when Wanda appears as the Scarlet Witch for the first time, like full blown, not the little glimpse we get when she touches the Mind Stone, but when she comes full blown into that Scarlet Witch costume, like, holy cow, for me, like a geek out moment. But it also helped, and I mentioned it earlier, but I sent you guys a side-by-side photo of this, where that costume to me just screams Magneto. There's a lot of comparisons that I drew from that costume to Magneto's, and that was like an off the charts moment for me, seeing her in that actual costume. So those are just 2 parts that I was blown away by. Harrison, what about you?
There was a lot of moments where I was really like blown away. If I had to pick one that would be my favorite, it's the end of episode 7, the beginning of episode 8, where Catherine Hahn's character Agnes reveals herself as Agatha. One, because I was just applauding myself for guessing it, and there's a little bit of selfish pride that's a part of it, and being like, "I told you, Rob!" as I'm sitting here on a Friday on my lunch break alone, just so that was like, really fulfilling.
I was wondering if anybody heard you like going, "Who is Rob? Like what? Like who is this guy yelling at?"
So that's definitely part of it. But the other reason that I loved it is one, I talked about how much I loved episode 8. And started off by just like letting Catherine Hahn just steal the show as Agatha was tons of fun. Letting her steal the show both in like the Salem when she was a witch, but also later when she confronts Wanda and kind of explains a little bit more about magic. But she's like, says something about how like she's like, my thoughts aren't available to you, toots, so don't go giving yourself a headache. Like I say that to myself in my head when I need a good laugh. Like just imagining Catherine Hahn. My thoughts aren't available to you, toots. I just love that moment.
I wouldn't say use that with the wife.
That's true.
Unless you like sleeping on the couch. I mean, maybe you do.
Yeah. Then I could lay up and think about the ship of Theseus. So maybe if I really need some clarity.
Oh man. So, one thing too that this show, and some of them turned out to be nothing, but they're fun. Also, too, one thing that we talked about during these episodes were the Easter eggs. And man, there's so many of them throughout here. You have little tiny references that are really for fans, where in the one commercial with the grocery store, there's something called Bova milk. And if you know the story of Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, there was a midwife named Bova who, Rob, we've watched X-Men the animated series. There's an episode with Bova, the midwife, and finding out who the father is of Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver in the comics and the television series. But there's so many Easter eggs in this show. So in line with the same thing of like scenes and everything, Rob, any of these Easter eggs that you still maybe have a theory on that we're going to see, or just as a fan, you were like, oh, that's really cool that they just kind of like sprinkled that in there?
There's a couple that jump out. You go back to episode 1 with the when the Hearts are coming over for dinner. The day, and I think I talked about this on the recap of it, but the day and the month that they chose, I want to say it was like August 23rd, I think is what the date was, which is the 23rd day of the 8th month, which is 238. There's an issue of the Avengers, issue 238, that focuses on them trying to bring Vision back online, which I thought was maybe it's a coincidence, but I don't think that it is. So I kind of liked that nod. I loved the nod to House of M with the wine bottle they were pouring. And another one that really stuck with me was I really liked the Lagos paper towels commercial, for cleaning up messes you didn't mean to make. Like, holy cow. Like if you knew what that really, like if you caught that reference, man, that was kind of cool. And I think that's one of the things I missed about the final couple episodes is that we didn't get more of the commercials. We didn't get it in 8 or 9, which I thought those were a lot of fun. It caught me by surprise because I don't think we expected that. And when they had the Stark toaster in the first episode, and then we got those same 2 actors in each commercial for the next few weeks, I kind of looked forward to those, and I really enjoyed them. It's kind of a neat thing that they tried that it was very creative, and I liked it a lot.
Awesome. Harrison, what about you, man?
I'm got to go with Rob first and say those commercials were awesome. Like, of all the things that didn't need to, one, even be a thing, but 2, to be that good. I know I remember us theorizing about how they meant all this stuff, and I don't think that they were ever intended to mean anything. I think it was just fun. It was sure as heck fun to theorize about, but they were just like fun. Like they put a commercial on a series that you subscribe to. They put a commercial in it, like how infuriating. But I'd gladly watch those commercials again. Beyond that, I'm just going to say all of the details that they put in episode 1, where like I spent hours perusing those first 2 episodes. What are all these details? What can I possibly pull from it? All the M's and all the things alluding to House of M. But my favorite one, without a doubt, is in the very first episode where Vision walks into the kitchen and Wanda's like floating a plate over to put it away, and it smashes on Vision's head, and he's like, "Oh, my wife and flying saucers," and she replies and says, "Oh, my husband and his indestructible head," which just like makes Endgame even or Infinity War even worse. But it's just like a funny Easter egg that like, okay, you didn't need to make that.
Right, like you know his head isn't indestructible. It's been crushed twice. Like like come on now, folks. Yeah, there's just again, we started this episode, guys, by talking about some of the things that Rob, a couple of things that him and I thought are a little bit more unforgivable than Harrison, but it just can't be said enough what this show has done for two characters that, look, fans like us, we're not the minority anymore. We're the norm. Rob, we talked about this in the MCU recap where the MCU made it where it's not just like, oh, you like comic books and you like these characters, you're a nerd. Like, no, everybody likes these things now. It's not uncommon to just walk outside and people are wearing a Captain America shirt or a Deadpool shirt or, something like that. So this show took two characters, the three of us included, that not a lot of people really cared about. And I just don't think that can be stressed enough how this was able to get them to the status that I feel that they are right now. I don't think anybody can walk away from this show and say that I still don't like Wanda and Vision as characters or I don't care about them. I can't imagine there's somebody out there, unless that's just, that's the person that wants to argue about it. Kind of like Rob with The Last Jedi. He just wants to argue that it's not good.
There we go. All right, everybody drink. We said it. Last Jedi, everyone drink.
But I can't imagine there's somebody who doesn't feel differently about these characters at the end of the show. And it excites me for what we're going to get with these other series because, we have Falcon and the Winter Soldier coming out, which I think people like those two characters right off the bat. We know people love Loki. What will they do with She-Hulk? How are they going to work Blade, Moon Knight? This is such an opportunity to give characters that don't have a lot of mainstream attention the spotlight that they deserve because they have some really good comic books and storylines. And if they could do this with two characters like this, I can't wait to see what they do with characters that are already liked, like a Loki, and if they can take him even further than the fan base that he has. So, Harrison, I'll just let you piggyback off that and kind of recap what this show was able to do with Wanda and Vision.
Of course, I got to add before I do, I still want to put it down that I was the first person to suggest that She-Hulk should be a crime drama about all the people dealing with the chaos that the snap caused, because that would be hilarious. I remember Rob generating that idea in my head, and I just want to put it firmly and pridefully that I think that'd be a great idea. I'm probably wrong, but whatever. So what the show is able to do was set the bar for what Disney Plus and the MCU means. Like, I remember when they announced WandaVision and all these other shows and how they were stressing like these are going to be connected to the rest of the shows. And I wasn't sure if I was going to subscribe to Disney Plus yet. Like, it was before it was really even a thing. I was like, you know what? If I miss them, I'll probably just read like a recap on YouTube or listen to a recap on YouTube before the next movie comes out. Like, I really was like, that's not a big deal. But I'm not missing a single one of these because they're good. And they've set the bar really high, and really excited me that, okay, these aren't just some stupid thing that they're using to just, oh, here's all these dumb things that we're making you watch. So you pay for our Disney Plus subscription so you can make sense of the next movie. Like, if you're going to make them connected, make it worthwhile. And they really did. And not just in like the worthwhile for entertainment, but worthwhile for the characters and also for what it means going forward. Like, the character of Wanda is someone I care about now, but also the character of Scarlet Witch is a thing, both in like name existing in the MCU, but also in threat level. So yeah, it's exciting what it means for the rest of the MCU. And I'm going to take them much more seriously But also in the weird year and a half that we didn't have almost 2 years that we haven't had like MCU content that kind of thrives off of controlling the zeitgeist. It was refreshing to be excited about the MCU again, because as I've had so much time to enjoy other films, I kind of just like cared less and less about the MCU. But now I'm like, oh, I can't wait. Like, when's the next one? It's exciting to be hyped up when that Marvel Studios logo comes on again. You know, whether you claim these are amusement parks or not, I don't really care because I'm having the time of my life. So if it's an amusement park, strap me in for 10 laps. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, Rob, same platform for you.
Yeah, so I kind of want to go like one step further than just what does this mean for Marvel and Disney Plus. Let's just kind of look at the shows we've gotten on Disney Plus, and go ahead and throw Mandalorian in there too. They've had the opportunity to kind of correct some things that maybe people didn't enjoy with some of the films. You know, there was a little bit of retconning here, a little bit of retconning there in both this show and a little bit in The Mandalorian. Certainly just something as simple as, spoiler alert, bringing Boba Fett back instead of having him killed off in the Sarlacc pit. You know, things like that. It really seems like we've got the opportunity to do things emotionally on television that Disney's giving us with their live action shows of their major properties that they own. That it just Harrison's Jack getting spoon fed. I'm Grogu just shoving the frog lady's eggs in my mouth. Like, give me more, Disney. Just give me more. I'm just mowing these things down as fast as you can give them to me. I don't care what the project is. You can pick the most obscure. Give me Squirrel Girl. I will watch a Squirrel Girl episode. If Disney says that's the next show, I'm in. I'm just 100% in. Give me the most obscure character. I don't even care. It's going to be epic.
Yeah, I think they, once again, they've just earned trust that they're going to do something good with these. And Harrison, you pinpointed that, where it could have been very easy when they stated, oh, you're going to need to watch these shows because WandaVision's going to lead into Doctor Strange. It could have very easily been well, you need to pay for Disney Plus, otherwise you're not going to, know what's going on, but we're not going to put a ton of effort into these shows. Obviously I don't think they'd make them terrible like the Eternals TV show, but they certainly have spared no expense with this, which is refreshing because of how many of these are going to do. So if this is what the bar is, it's really interesting to watch. But I also wonder, Harrison, I'll pose this question to you first. Do you think that because of how much content we'll get and how these shows will be able to expand these characters, do you think somewhere down the line it might hurt some of the movies because they don't have as much time? Or do you think because they're going to be so interconnected that it's literally almost just an extension of that? So it'll feel like things that happened in, let's say, like Doctor Strange 2 in the multiverse are just an extension, like they've talked about, of WandaVision. So it will feel connected and not just like, there could have been more that they did with this.
Yeah. Great question, by the way. Like, holy smokes. I haven't said this enough to you, Matt. And let me say this. Rob and I, you two, we bring this chaotic energy to these episodes, and somehow you steer us straight every time. And the question you ask, I'm always impressed with. And I just got to compliment your hosting abilities of these episodes, because I'm pretty sure I've tried to tip the canoe a few times, and you helped us stay afloat. So thank you, because that was a great question. But now to get to the question, I think that it's definitely going to be a good balance. We've said this so many times, it's almost pathetic how much we say this. Neither of us would have cared about Wanda or Vision without this series. And I'm really grateful for the series, because now the next time Wanda or Vision shows up in a project of the MCU, I'm way more intrigued. So I think that it's going to be kind of similar. I think we talked about kind of this idea before, is similar to comics, where these series on MCU are on, oh my gosh, in Disney Plus are going to be like the comics for the individual characters. And then the movies are going to be the big crossover events. I don't think it's going to be quite that simple. I think we're still going to get a mix between everything. But I think that it's going to allow for really rich storytelling, both in the movies and out. I think that there's still specific formats and specific things that are better served in a movie, like an origin story, like I'm assuming we're going to get with Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Like I love a good origin story. I'm all for it. I know some people don't like them, but I'm all for them. So like a good origin story movie, I'm all there. And if you drag that out in a series, especially if I had to wait every week, I would be so irritated. So just like my personal patience, I'm excited that we're still getting both. But also to say like, oh, we got the origin of Monica Rambeau as Spectrum without her standalone movie. And now the next time she shows up in a project, I'm super excited. So I didn't really answer your question except for Chan just like smeared it all around and said, I think it's going to be good. To try and put a definition to your question, I think that the series definitely has a strength in the ability to develop characters a lot stronger than a movie. But I think that there's still some things that the movies are going to have a better chance at, and I'm just excited for them to work together. Because if anything is true about WandaVision, it's that it's going to work really well in the rest of the MCU, including Black Widow whenever that happens. So yeah, I'm just excited for everything to mesh together and how we'll have the benefits of both.
Yeah, they just really quickly, Rob, before I let you answer the same thing, they were just adamant that Black Widow will come out May 7th. There was just an article about that nope, it May 7th, it's coming out. It'll be in theaters, and you don't need to ask that question anymore. So that'll be interesting to see what happens there. But Rob, same question. Do you have any worry that some of the movies might get lost in the shuffle because they're just simply not going to have as much time? Or do you think the way that it seems it's going to be so interconnected, it's just going to flow naturally?
Yeah, I think with your origin stories primarily happening in the films and then those relationships building up across multiple films, we didn't get a TV show for Tony Stark of any sort, but when he snaps his fingers at the end of Endgame and starts to die,
That's so
tears,
morbid.
tears streaming down my face, like when they play his kind of his last message and they have the funeral for him. You don't need a TV show for that. You can tell the stories you want to tell. I think if I do have a concern, and this has been one of my concerns all along, what were we going to get quality on TV, or were we going to just kind of get something that, okay, guys, if you want this, almost like DLC in video games, like if you want all of this, you have to pay this much a month in order to have this. And if you want all of the movies to make sense, you need to watch all this stuff too, which means you have to pay us more money. I was in the back of my mind a little concerned that we might have that. And I still think there's definitely fans that don't have their sisters, husbands, bosses, cousins, friends, Disney Plus login that they're going to use to watch this. And that's okay. My concern is, will there be casual moviegoers who enjoy these films? Maybe they've seen all of them, maybe they haven't, that won't be as excited or be first in line necessarily like they normally would have been to watch the next film because they didn't see the show, they haven't had time. Watching 9 weeks of a show is certainly more of an investment than, when a major tentpole film comes out and you make time to go see it. It's easy to get behind on TV. I've got shows that I'm years behind on. Will this dissuade people from engaging in Doctor Strange 2 if they haven't seen this yet? And I hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good point. So
I got to jump in here super quick and say first, Rob, I'm sorry to interrupt you when you were talking about Tony Stark and saying it was so morbid. You just said it in such a deadpan way. I couldn't but laugh.
He's dead.
I have to ask you, Matt, because the other day, time is weird. Whatever day we were talking, Rob was saying how you did the Justice League episode that I'm currently listening to that you guys did without any notes. which is impressive. So I have to ask, are you doing this episode without notes? Did you ask me that question off the cuff?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I actually asked you that question while buying something on Amazon.
This is unfair.
Matt was using his astral form to think of the question while he was hosting the show.
Yeah.
Well, there you
when
go.
it comes to something like this, usually I don't know. This stuff has just always been a part of my life, so it's so easy for me to think about what I want to say and what I want to talk about. Now, you asked me, was I supposed to pick you up at 5:30 at the airport? Well, you probably know I didn't remember because you took a bus to get here. So
I'm going to call Rob for that, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, because I'm going to have it in my phone, and I'm going to have multiple reminders telling me to leave. But we've talked about the nature of fandom a little bit, and Matt, even before you started your show, there was an offline version of Matt Goes to the Movies, and it was pretty much every conversation you and I ever had, for the most part, was at some point kind of a version of this show. And it's great that there is something like this available. I mean, it's like we talked about. This is kind of the show that's in pop culture right now. This is the one everyone's talking about, and it's about a TV show based on a series of films based on comic books that in the 80s and even earlier than that were for kids, and you were a dork if you were into them.
And almost went bankrupt.
Yeah, and had to sell off their most popular characters' film rights just to stay afloat. And we talked about this before. I mean, to think what Sony could have bought the entire assortment of characters for is laughable.
Yeah, Rob, wasn't it like 25 million?
Yeah, it was it was like half of what Iron Man brought in at the box office, like half of that.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Let alone I think Endgame ended up making all of the money. So,
they just have a printing machine for money now.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, the treasurer just brought it in and said, "Here, you guys are going to need this. It'll make it easier."
So, it's WandaVision's over. Bittersweet here, but we'll talk about a couple things that are still coming in the pipeline from the three of us, which I'm excited about. But there's two ratings that we have to do. One is for this episode alone, and the other one's going to be for what we think of the show as a whole. So I'll go first with just my rating for the episode. I give this one 4 out of 5 because the things I mentioned earlier, and I'm not going to harp on them, just the Quicksilver reveal, or lack thereof, the decision not to use James Spader as the voice of Ultron for White Vision. Rob, I'll echo what you said about Hayward, just kind of, especially in this episode too, it's some of his decisions were a little off to me. Again, it's still a solid episode, but this one for me is a 4 out of 5. Rob, I'll let you go next.
This one should have been a 5. Should have been. But the decision to make currently Quicksilver not actually anything, it not only makes this episode less to me, it actually makes the whole series less to me, as much as I enjoyed it overall. And again, like you had mentioned, the whole point of Sword and Hayward, he turned into a cartoon villain very quickly in this final episode for no real reason. I really would have loved to give this 5. But those things leave it as a 4 for me.
Harrison, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, for the episode, I'll give it a 4.5 out of 5 for all the reasons that you guys said, except for the fact that I didn't have any complaints until after the episode. During the thing, I was like, "This is the best thing ever," and then it wasn't until I stopped being spoon-fed as Jack that I was like, "Okay, maybe not." So 4.5 for having both sides strong enough, particularly the spoon-feeding enjoyment, to not even notice the complaints until afterwards. So 4.5.
I will say, and Rob, I don't know if you did, but this Quicksilver reveal, it did last longer than 4 hours, so I believe we're supposed to call a doctor. But that's a bad. That's a terrible dad joke for listeners out there. But
Oh my God.
what? Let's talk about the overall episode. Well, I should say overall series. And Harrison, you go first. What's your thoughts, man? What does this series rate for you?
It's an easy, excuse me, it's an easy 5 for me. I've talked about this before. After episode 8, I was on board that I don't care what happens. I care about Wanda, and the show's ability to make me care about Wanda in such a deep way is a 5. For that reason alone, yeah, there's flaws. Yeah, the season, or it's a series, not season. I got to stop saying that. The series ended a little bit dry. There were some areas where there were some serious missteps, but the series as a whole blew me away week by week, and I had no idea that I wanted it this badly. Like, I had no care for WandaVision. It was kind of like, oh, it came out. Here's the first 2 episodes. I guess I'm kind of excited because it's something new. But then it got to the point where it's like, oh my gosh, it's Tuesday and I need it to be Friday already. So yeah, the series really sucked me in, and I deeply care about Wanda and Vision, and I did not before. So 5 out of 5.
Awesome. Rob, series for you. Where would this rank?
So episode 9 should have been a 5 for me. I couldn't because of a couple of things. This series as a whole probably should have been a 5. And if I will say this, and maybe I'm still just too hung up on it, but the red herring of Pietro, he shows up, and at the end of episode 5, it's this major cliffhanger. We kind of deal with it the next week. We deal with it the week after. We continue to deal with it, trying to wonder what this is going to mean, how this is all going to tie together. This is a major subplot of the entire series, and it meant nothing. That is probably the biggest thing, because I can overlook. I mean, I've spent time kind of nitpicking this, nitpicking that. I can overlook all of that, and I could have given this a 5 as a whole series because of how much I enjoyed it. But it's a 4.5 for me, if only because I just feel really betrayed by the fake out on Pietro.
Yeah, I would agree with Rob. This is a 4.5 out of 5 for me. And again, to me, that's a good problem to have, because I did not think this would be this good. So I in no way, shape, or form want to say that this is a bad review, because this show completely exceeded my expectations. And, to close this episode out here, we agreed, guys, that we're going to do Falcon and the Winter Soldier together. So I'm super excited about that, because this has been a lot of fun. So, before we close out, I do want to say, thank you, Rob. Thank you, Harrison. This has been awesome to do this show. I really appreciate you guys being on here. To the listeners, I know, Rob and I talk about this, and, Harrison runs the Basement Binge, which, again, I just can't plug that show enough. If you haven't crossed over and listened to any of his episodes, please do that. All his show notes are in the episode notes at the bottom of this. The show's great. It was an inspiration for this show. So I really look forward to filming The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And until next time, we're going to see you on these next episodes. So thanks, everybody.